Summer routines live or die by how easy they are, and honestly, if something takes too much effort, I'm out. That's why Groons is my go-to. It's my one daily pack of gummies covering my greens, vitamins, and minerals. Plus, it has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, which is more than 2 cups of broccoli. No mixing powders, no giant pills, no hassle. I just rip open the pack and I'm done. They taste good and they make it easy to stay on top of my health, even when life gets busy. Save up to 52% with the code PODCAST at Groons.co. That's code PODCAST at GRUNS.co.
This season, all your favorites have one home for the holidays. Yours with Disney Plus.
Merry Christmas!
Moana, Woody, Buzz, Captain Marvel, Darth Vader, and Homer will all be there, so make room. Make Disney Plus your home for the holidays. Streaming Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, Nat Geo, and 30 seasons of The Simpsons. That's something to celebrate.
Merry Christmas to you!
All these and more now streaming. Go to DisneyPlus.com to sign up now.
Welcome back to TalkNorth.com. Thank you for listening. If you can, please download before you listen. It helps our business. I'd also like to thank our producer, Brandon Morton, and let you know if you'd like to sponsor this program or any of the programs on the network. You can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com. We've had quite the travel summers. I'm in San Francisco with my wife on vacation this week. Where are you?
Me, I'm sitting in my office here at my house, and I am going Wednesday to Boston for a day to do a story, and that's why we have to change our live show at the at Tin Shed till the day before. So I do apologize for that, Jim.
Oh, it's okay. So to remind people, our next live show's at Tin Shed in Savage, where we've had huge turnout the last 2 shows. I really appreciate everybody makes the effort to come out and see us in person and stops by and chats. Next 2 live shows are going to be August 13th and August 29th, 7 p.m., both cases at Tin Shed Savage. I don't know that we could promise a 200th anniversary show or a major breaking general manager being fired story every time, but we still would love to see all the people that came out. Anytime you can make it out, stop by. You know the deal. Good food, good drink, good people, and a good time. This is the Russo-Souhan Show, part of the TalkNorth.com podcast network. Thanks to our sponsors, Twill in the Dining Galleria, FixologyRepair.com, now in 3 locations, including the new one in St. Paul, Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin, Bite Squad, and, of course, Tin Shed. Tin Shed MN is the best place to find them. All right, so let's start moving this story forward. I know you did a big piece breaking down what led to the firing of Paul Fenton. Is there anything new to add at this point?
No, I mean, that story I did the other day, obviously I reached out to Paul to talk to him for the story because I'm well aware that story is one side, and, obviously Paul didn't write back. So it really became a one-sided story. And, I painstakingly tried, if you read throughout that story, tried to give sort of, maybe what Paul was thinking during this, or try to, at least say stuff like it's his prerogative to do what he wants with his staff, and it's his prerogative to do what he wants with his coaches and things like that. So, but I agree. I mean, it's a tough story. It's not a great look for what went on inside the organization the last year. Trust me, that was the very thinned out version of what it could have been. And now it's just a matter of kind of realizing as an organization that you've got to now take the time here and do the due diligence to hire the perfect the candidate. Not every candidate's going to check all the boxes. There are some really, really good candidates right now. I think that Craig Leopold, Matt Maka, and Mike Modano have a really good plan going forward. I can tell you from reading the tea leaves that I don't think that this decision that they are going to have a hiring in the next couple of weeks. I think this is more than likely going to happen in the last week of August, or maybe a little bit before that. I just get the impression right now, Craig has left town for a little bit. Matt Macon, Mike Modano are doing a lot of the work behind the scenes to talk to candidates, to do a lot of the due diligence. Then when Craig gets back into town next week, they'll really put the pedal to the metal, bring in some more people to interview, and then probably begin their rounds of second interviews. But right now, the way that I'm seeing things is that you have kind of the experienced guys that have a chance. Those guys would be Ron Hextall and Don Waddell as your two probably favorites of that group of people that include the Peter Chiarellis of the world, and then there's Garth Snow. I don't get the impression that Dean Lombardi is interested in the job, because I do believe that behind the scenes, Dean Lombardi has been a really good resource for the Wild to talk about some of these clients, like Mike Fuda in LA, Ron Hextall, people like that. Then you have kind of the assistant GM grouping. Another person with experience, by the way, that will have an interview, I believe, is Brian Lawton. I know he had a phone interview, and I think he's going to get in front of him, at some point, whether it's this week or when Craig Leopold gets back. And Brian obviously has seen a ton of games, knows this team like the back of his hand, has seen a ton of games with his role on NHL Network. And obviously, if you ever talk to him, I'm sure that he'll put a presentation that impresses them together. Then you have the assistant GMs. Those start with Billy Guerin. I think he's the front runner of them all right now. This is the second year in a row they've interviewed him. I think it went really well. Next one, I think, would be Scott Mellenby. I think Mellenby is going to get in front of them, and I know that they've heard a lot of really good things about him. Tom Fitzgerald is the one that still sort of is peculiar to me. He, from everything I've reported, was the runner-up last year. From everything I hear right now, they have not actually officially called, as of this moment that I'm speaking, for permission to talk to him. So I don't know if it's because they feel they know him, but as far as I know, they haven't reached out. Maybe they also know that in that time frame that Tom Fitzgerald, his role has increased with New Jersey. Maybe he's gotten a big raise. Maybe, a lot of times when your role is elevated in the front office, Bill Zito's in this category too. That a lot of times part of your deal is that you're not going to go for every job, or that the only way that you'll be allowed to talk to another team again is essentially you're a shoo-in. So maybe Tom's not part of that. Mike Fuda, as I mentioned, in LA, very well respected in the game. They're hearing great things about him. Bill Zito, as I mentioned, I think they're going to have a phone interview with Basil McRae. I don't look at him as a first-tier candidate. I think he's just going to, this is sort of Mike Modano's tight with him. I think they want to hear his opinions of the organization, give him an interview. And then there's kind of the next, the unique candidates that don't fit into either of those categories. One would be Mark Hunter. I do believe he's going to interview for the job. He's been a finalist in places like Edmonton and Seattle. He's the current co-owner of the London Knights with his brother Dale Hunter, and he's the GM of that team. Left the Toronto Maple Leafs when he didn't get the job over Kyle Dubas last year, the GM job. And the other name, I'm not kidding you, that I do think that they're going to at least talk to. I don't look at him as being a first tier candidate at all. Is Pierre Maguire. I think that there's respect for him outside the organization in the NHL that have suggested to the Wild to talk to him, and I think Craig Leopold likes him, and I think that he's just going to at least talk to him. The one thing about Pierre is that he's seen a ton of hockey, so sometimes, again, part of these processes when you interview candidates is that you try to figure out a lot of intel about what the perception is about your roster, your team, things going on here. And Pierre Maguire has a lot of friends. He knows probably a lot of details about what went on with this organization, not only the last year, but since he was a candidate in 2009. And maybe you gain some intel, even if you don't look at him as right away as a candidate on par with Hextall and Waddell and Guerin and Mellenby and people like that.
Wow, that's quite a rundown. Sounds like they have a lot of work ahead of them. I'm going to ask you one question, then we're going to do a lot of Twitter questions today because we usually don't get as many Twitter questions when we do the live shows. So Modano is a big name here. He was a big part of hockey and hockey success in Dallas. He was incredibly popular there. But is he the right guy to help an owner who messed up the last hire fix it? Does he have the skills and the knowledge to make this a better search?
Well, I mean, obviously, in terms of hockey ops experience, he doesn't have that yet. I think his hope is that this eventually transitions into somebody that not just helps the Wild with business and all that, but that could transition into, being an advisor for the new GM, or even potentially advancing to being president of hockey ops one day and provide oversight and be a liaison to Craig Leopold. But what I like about Modano is that he is doing his homework. I did a huge story on him the other day. He's talked to guys like Lou Lamoriello, Bob Gainey, Kenny Holland, and really tried to ascertain and learn the type of things that they look for in a good GM, questions to ask. The other thing I like about Mike Modano is he's got a ton of friends in the game. So you, behind the scenes, while maybe Matt Macon, Craig Leopold has done the initial interviews, Mike Modano wasn't in the room for the Chiarelli, Hextall, Waddell, and Billy Guerin interviews, as I've reported here in The Athletic that they've already interviewed for this job. He wasn't in the room for that, but he will be later in the process. But he's somebody that can present to Craig Leopold and Matt Maka the things that he is hearing about these people in his due diligence, things that friends are telling about these guys, and he can almost make a presentation and do a lot of that background work that maybe was missed with Paul Fenton and the last go around here. So, regardless of who it is, I mean, it's the top scoring U.S. born player in the history of the NHL. I just think that to have somebody that could ask hockey questions in the room, I think is absolutely huge. And it'll be interesting. I mean, there's just some weird. The fact that Don Waddell has suddenly gotten this process has now all of a sudden changed everything. I can tell you that I think Ron Hextall had a great interview with Craig Leopold and Matt Maka. I think that Billy Guerin had a great interview with Matt Maka. If you know Don Waddell, there's no doubt that he hit the interview out of the park. And I think what impresses, there's a history there between Craig Leopold and Don Waddell. I mean, Don Waddell was actually up for the original Nashville job back in 1997. And then obviously they hired David Poile, which was the right decision at the time, clearly by Craig Leopold. And so Don Waddell goes to the Atlanta Thrashers. And they've kept in touch ever since because Don Waddell has always also been part of the business side of a team. He's been a governor of all the teams he's been with in both Carolina and Atlanta, at least. I don't think in Pittsburgh. And so he gets to basically be at these Board of Governors meetings and converse and things like that with Craig Leopold. I think what makes Don Waddell really interesting here is, one, he's a current GM. He's coming off a great season in Carolina, and he's somebody that that would have the personality and the experience level to come into a really tricky situation very late in the game and close to training camp, which to me is the most frightened thing about this process is that, if you hire a newbie or if you hire somebody that doesn't have the institutional background to come here, all of a sudden, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has to be happen that starts in April for the next year's training camp, let alone in late August, 2 weeks before camp, where I don't think that a guy like Waddell would be intimidated by that at all. He'll know right away he's got to sit down with Zach Parise. He'll know right away he's got to get in front of Jared Spurgeon. He'll know right away he's got to fly to Russia and talk to Kaprizov. But there's so much to do. I mean, you got to figure out who's on your staff, the terms of contracts of your scouts, who your scouts are. Plus, you got to move your entire life here. I mean, I remember, not to bring this back to me, but I remember I took the job I was offered the job at the Star Tribune when Hurricane Katrina came over Florida. So that would have been probably late August, right? And then it took me until about September 3rd or 4th to accept the job. And I moved my entire life here September 9th for training camp that started September 12th. And it took me 2 months to just stop from my heart palpitating because of all the stuff that you got to do behind the scenes to move your entire life somewhere, let alone get used to a new job and learn a new team. So you take this now, that very macro level, and you take it now to being the GM of a franchise, the CEO of your hockey ops department. This is very tough. And I just think that all of a sudden Waddell being available is going to really make Craig Leopold and Matt Maka think. It is absurd to me that he's even available. The lack of respect level from the owner down there, Tom Dundon, and those quotes were in the Raleigh News and Observer. So I broke the story yesterday morning that Waddell was here. Luke DeCock, Sarah Sivian from The Athletic confirmed it as well. And then Luke DeCock actually got Tom Dundon on the phone, the News and Observer columnist, and the quotes are just unreal. Like, yeah, I told him to go for the interview. If he can make more money there, all the power to him. And this is a GM that I'm pretty positive, I don't know this for a fact, but he was not making a ton of money as the president of the team, and then didn't take a penny more to be the GM of the team. And now all of a sudden it's August 5th, and a GM of the year finalist that took his team to the Eastern Conference Final has no contract. This is absolutely unprecedented that a current GM of a team, it's unprecedented that there'd be a GM opening this late in the game anyway. But it's unprecedented that a current GM would be allowed to go for that position. And now Don Waddell is absolutely a viable candidate. This is not about leverage. Like, a lot of people just think he's trying to get more money from his owner. This is not about leverage. I think Don Waddell feels disrespected, and if this job is offered to Don Waddell, he will be the next GM of the Wild, I think.
Well, he's my new favorite candidate. Hey, let's thank Twill and Galleria, twillmn.com. Scott Dayton Shop. He's been sponsoring this program for a long time and the network for a long time, and I am wearing Twill as we speak, as always.
I'm here with my wife, Stacy. We went to Twill in the Edina Galleria the other day. We saw Scott Dayton, and I bought the nicest sport jacket I've ever owned, the most comfortable pants I've ever owned. They're Bracks. A nice pair of loafers that I can wear to the ballpark. I think they're called Tracks. And I bought a bunch of Stenstrom short sleeve shirts to go with my Stenstrom nice dress shirts. And, I used to wear just disposable clothes. Now when I buy something, I buy it at Twill. I know it's going to last me the rest of my life, and it's going to be comfortable.
And on top of that, it's not just the best stuff you've ever had, but it's really everyday things that you can wear and that will fit all occasions.
Yeah, I've worn the Stenstrom short sleeve shirts every day this week. When I dress up or even just want to look nice at a game or a Lynx game or something, I wear the Stenstrom dress shirts. But really, the Bracks pants are the most comfortable I've ever worn. They are more comfortable than jeans. I never thought I'd have anything more comfortable than a broken-in pair of jeans.
And he keeps saying that, Scott, so thank you very much.
Twill in the Edina Galleria, twillmn.com, Twill on Instagram.
And Jim, let me just after that little kind of mini Russo rant that I just said, I don't want to make people think that I'm like campaigning for Don Waddell or that he is the lone candidate or the front runner right now. I think Bill Guerin is absolutely a viable candidate for this job, and I do think Ron Hextall is a viable candidate for this job, and I think people like Scott Mellenby as well. I can't remember in my first Russo rant if I mentioned Brian Lawton, but I think he'll wind up being a candidate for this job. But to me right now, what I'm hearing when I make my list, I can see it being kind of Mellenby versus Guerin, maybe with Fitzy in there late, and Waddell versus Hextall. That's just, sort of where I'm at right now. Unless there's a secret candidate, which sometimes there are. I don't know if you remember, but when I was at the Star Tribune, it was a year into Chuck Fletcher's tenure when I finally figured out who the real second finalist was for that job. And I went public with it and actually quoted the candidate, and that was Steve Yzerman. And it was fascinating. In 2009, when Doug Risebrough was fired and Craig Leopold went up through his search, it got down to Yzerman versus Chuck Fletcher. And Craig really wanted to hire Yzerman. It was the 2009-10 season. And Yzerman felt like being a rookie GM of the Minnesota Wild would be extremely difficult navigating being a rookie GM of Team Canada for Vancouver for the Olympics. And so he turned down the job. Before Craig Leopold offered the job officially to Chuck Fletcher, Craig Leopold couldn't sleep one night. And he calls up Yzerman and he goes, "Can I fly to you and just meet with you in Detroit and let's just discuss this?" And he actually flew to Detroit, to Bloomfield Hills where Steve Yzerman lived, I believe, met with Yzerman. They met for like several hours. And at the end of the meeting, Yzerman just felt like it wasn't the right thing to do to Team Canada or the Minnesota Wild to take the job. And so he turned down the job. Chuck Fletcher was hired. The next year, Brian Lawton was fired in Tampa Bay, and Yzerman became the rookie GM of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And it's just, if it was 1 year earlier, I mean, it's just so funny the way it works. I mean, it's, in 2008, Craig Leopold came in to own the Minnesota Wild. He had every right to fire his GM, but they had just won the division. They won their only division title in franchise history, the Northwest Division. So you're not firing Doug Risebrough then, but if he fires Risebrough then, Yzerman might have been the GM. If he decided to fire Doug Risebrough 1 year later than he did, Steve Yzerman probably would have been the GM of the Wild the last several years. Isn't it crazy? I mean, all the way timing works. And, it's sort of at that situation now where all of a sudden you have a crop of candidates that are available that were not available last year. Ron Hextall was not available last year. People like that. Don Waddell would nobody even thought that Don Waddell should be a candidate a year ago, but now all of a sudden a year later, he's a GM of the year finalist. He makes some really, really good moves. Everything he touched turned to gold in Carolina, and he kind of resurrects his reputation as a manager. And now all of a sudden he's potentially a front runner for this job. It is always crazy timing and the way things work.
Oh, absolutely. Great stuff. And we are going to get to Twitter questions. I do want to thank Fixology Repair, fixologyrepair.com. They now have a new location downtown in the St. Paul Skyway, not far from the Wild offices. and they handle. It's in the Wells Fargo Place in downtown St. Paul. Staff with professionally trained expert jewelers that provide a full range of exceptional jewelry repair, refinishing, and refurbishment services. They do cleaning and polishing, ring sizing, stone matching, necklace repair, bracelet repair, pearl and bead restringing, sterling silver repair. They have a fixology battery warranty program. And they got everything. And they do all the iPhone, iPad, cell phone, tablet repair. Check out fixologyrepair.com. Go to the location and check out the new location in St. Paul. They also have the place in downtown Minneapolis in the Skyway, and of course the big store out at the Mall of America, 3rd floor by Nordstrom's. Fixologyrepair.com. All right, to go to Twitter questions from Kip. Who are the best UFA signings in Wild history? My list is Rolston, Parisi, and Suter.
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely go with there. I think Ralston, to me, Suter and Parisi are interesting because obviously you knew at that time when they signed 13-year deals that there was going to come a point where it'd be like, oh my God, not just for the Wild, by the way, but for them maybe. And we're seeing that, I think, right now with Zach Parisi. You know, it'd be funny to go back and ask Zach Parisi right now, like, hey, what advice would you give to a 27-year-old free agent named Zach Parisi? He'd probably tell you sign a shorter-term deal. So it's not just from a Wild perspective. But to me, Brian Ralston, 3 years, 30 goals each year. To me, at the price that they paid him, which was, I think, 2.5 or something ridiculous at that time, I still look at Brian Ralston as kind of being one of the best free agent signings. And then it depends how you term free agent. You know, technically, Jared Spurgeon was a free agent signing. And so if you want to include a junior free agent, you know, Jared Spurgeon's got to be in probably the top 4 as well.
From Alex Gaylor or Gellert.
Can I tell you one other that just popped in my head that I know Wild fans probably might roll their eyes on? But Nicholas Backstrom. He was the first European free agent, I believe, in NHL history. And you know, because there was a time where you could actually draft like a 27. I remember we were in Florida once, and I think the Panthers drafted Yaroslav Spacek at age like 25 or 26. There used to be, to get Euros, you actually had to draft them type thing. I think when they made Europeans allowed to be free agents, I'm pretty sure Backstrom was the first one ever. And you look at Backstrom right now, I'm on Hockey Reference, and Backstrom still to this day, might change one day, is the all-time leading wins leader for the Minnesota Wild. I mean, so obviously, you know, you could say, I think a lot of people, you know, the lasting memories sometimes are the way that a careers finish. And obviously Backstrom struggled down the stretch here. Right now he has more wins than in anybody in NHL history or in Wild history. And that better change this year, because if it doesn't change this year, by the way, the Wild are going to have an absolutely horrific season. But the only reason why I say that is Devin Dubnyk's 29 wins behind him. And if Devin Dubnyk doesn't get to 30 wins this year, Wild might be looking at a lottery pick. So. Yeah.
Hey, we also want to thank Tony Hoaglund, Hoaglund. He works out of Champlin. You can work with him wherever you live in the metro area or in Minnesota. Michael and I both live pretty far from Champlin. We still have Tony as our insurance agent, and he's done a great job for us.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoaglund. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all $700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number 1 in car insurance since World War II and number 1 in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
Also from Alex, which one of the younger guys do you think takes the biggest step forward this season?
You know, I think Cunnin. It'll be interesting. Things have now suddenly changed. I mean, if Alex asked this question last Monday when Paul Fenton was still the GM, I would say probably Fiala or Donato, because I think that their pressure when you have a GM that acquires 2 players is that he's going to dictate to the coach ice time on those guys. Now suddenly you don't have that pressure above you, and now maybe Luke Cunnin would get significantly bigger role on this team in a higher position. And so Cunnin's one guy. I don't know. I think the world of that kid. This guy, you know, the one thing that I don't know if you read between the lines of my Fenton piece last week, but Luke Cunnin at the All-Star break was not expecting to go to the minors. Okay. And this is again, back to the mismanagement of Paul Fenton. Luke Cunnin had plans during the All-Star break. Now it's perfectly reasonable that a GM would say after the season, I want my group, my two-way contracted guys to get experience in the minors and play there. It's reasonable even at the All-Star break to say, you know what, these guys are going down to the minors and they're going to play. But if you're going to do that, you should communicate that to the player 2-3 weeks before. These guys were blindsided. They had an All-Star game. Both Eriksson Ek and Cunnin had All-Star game and bye-week plans and had to cancel it the day before. Not only that, Luke Cunnin, I alluded to it at the time, was playing on a lower body injury. He was playing on a broken foot. He could barely walk after that last game in Denver. And the next day he's in Iowa and he's just playing, no big deal. I mean, that to me is a sign, and then last summer, ACL recovery the entire summer, doesn't get his summer basically. And after the season, he's told to go to the minors with Donato and Greenway. He's not happy about it. But you know what he does? He goes down there and scores 9 freaking goals. This guy is captain material. And so I don't know. I just think the world of that kid. And so, look, Fiala and Donato better have big years. I think Donato, from a character standpoint, is as good a person as I've, so far from what I've seen, is just a great dude. And I think that he's got a lot of assets in his toolbox that he's going to have to, continue to excel at. And then there's going to be definitely warts in his game, defensively especially, that he's going to have to, improve. And then Fiala's got to, kind of continue to be a guy that's got to excel and break through here, because the Wild are obviously gave up a huge asset for him. So I think those guys have a chance to get to that point that Alex is asking. But to me, I'd put those two right on par with Luke Cunnin, because right now, suddenly, with Paul Fenton not here, I think it changes probably what the allotment of ice times and responsibilities will be on this team a bit.
Interesting. From Kellen Johnson, are the interviews and conversations with Pierre McGuire legit for the GM position, or possibly more around insights into locker room morale?
Yeah, I think probably a little bit of both. I don't know if I mentioned earlier in the podcast that Pierre McGuire is probably going to get talked to.
Yeah, you did.
I think I mentioned on Spit and Chicklets yesterday. I just, from what I'm hearing through the grapevine, through league sources, I do think that Pierre McGuire is at a minimum going to be able to get in front of the Wild and talk about this team and his desire to be a general manager in this team. I always joke with Pierre every time I see him. It's like, he wants to be a GM, but it's like, I always say, Pierre, you're going to have to take a big pay cut to do that, because, he's the busiest guy in TV right now. He is. I mean, this year, remember what he was doing? He was going between every Western Conference game, and it's just crazy how much he travels. And, I'm sure the money that he makes working for NBC. So if he's the Wild GM, he might have to take a bit of a pay cut.
From Benjamin Hurtle, the disconnected locker room referenced earlier in the offseason between players, was that due to Fenton, or was there more going on?
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, that was not Fenton's fault. I mean, I think you need a leader to get in there and work with these guys, and they're trying to, and it's a big part of the interview process. Trust me, I've heard through the grapevine that a huge part of the interview process is Craig Leopold's really concern about the locker room right now and it being fractured and in a bit of disarray. And he's going to want a leader that's going to go in there and deal with a lot of personalities and try to fix it. And I think that it could happen, but that absolutely, preceded Paul Fenton's arrival.
Kevin Gustafson, besides bringing Modano, what other steps are they taking to assure they aren't hiring another Fenton? Now, you might have already addressed that. Is there anything other aspect of that answer you'd like to provide?
Well, I just think a lot of due diligence, a lot of talking to several people. I think with Paul Fenton, they relied on a couple people that Craig Leopold really, really trusted, that I think he feels stung by, quite frankly, and maybe led down the wrong path. And I think that they're just going to be a lot more diligent this time around, where the word due diligence comes from, and to really behind the scenes here do a lot of that work. I know Mike Modano is doing it. I believe that Matt Maka, again, Craig is out of town here until I don't really know exactly. I think next Tuesday. So I think behind the scenes right now, there's going to be some phone interviews with Matt Maka and Mike Modano with a couple of people, but I think a lot of the work behind the scenes is Maka and Modano really sit down and make a quality decision here going forward.
From NH, how come Dumba and Boudreau seem to be the only ones on the team who have the us against the world mentality going into the season? First of all, is that an accurate assessment, and if so, why?
Yeah, I got to be completely honest. I don't know what you mean.
I don't get that one.
Yeah. So, maybe just to explain what you mean. I'm not kind of comprehending their, exactly what that question means.
Let's see. For Johnson from Wisconsin, who's become a regular, does the new GM mean that Bruce Boudreau could be extended, or are we looking at a bring in his own guy scenario again?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like I know that Bruce would love an extension. I do think that sometimes it'd be really good to at least give a coach a 1-year extension, if for no other reason than the perception inside the locker room and with the media. Because, if the Wild struggle out of the gate, it just is a topic. It's a topic that is an immediate elephant in the room when you know that the GM or the coach for a team is in the last year of his contract. And so, I just think it's maybe a smart thing. But look, any GM eventually is going to want to bring in his own guy. And so that's the reason why it would not shock me, unless the new GM has some incredible relationship that is preemptive to here in Minnesota with Bruce Boudreau, that most likely he's going to have to work the final year of his contract, because it just is, from a GM standpoint, if you're not allowed to immediately fire the coach, you usually don't want to give that guy an extension, because next year it gives you that ability to kind of clean house and bring in your own guys. So it's a tough question. But my gut right now tells me that Bruce wouldn't be fired. But I think at this point, him getting an extension is at least, to start off with as a first move, is unheard of. I will be interested to see what happens with the coaching staff if they stay on. I mean, there's no doubt that a couple of those people aligned themselves with Paul Fenton, and it created some schisms last year. And, I do think that those people, have to be a little concerned. I mean, and then one of them, obviously, is Dean Evison. I think he's a great guy and a great coach, but everything is going to be looking at, everybody looks at him as kind of Paul Fenton's handpicked guy to be a successor of Bruce Boudreau.
Right. Let's get some more Twitter questions in before we wrap up. I want one more commercial break here. I want to thank Bite Squad, bitesquad.com. Use the Bite Squad code TALKNORTH, one word, to get your first delivery fee waived, but keep using it after that. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, anywhere you are, anytime you want. Great restaurant quality food delivered right to you. You can join their membership program, $5.99 a month, free deliveries all month within a 4-mile radius. Also want to thank Tin Shed again. If you want to access Tin Shed and keep track of the schedule and all their specials, Tin Shed Savage on Twitter, Tin Shed Savage on Twitter, or Tin Shed MN on the internet to again, check out their menu, specials. They have all kinds of stuff going on all the time. They have a bunch of big screen TVs. They have all the games and video games and pinball machines up against the wall. It's a great place to hang out, and we appreciate all of them supporting this podcast. From Mitch, do you think this new core of young players has a higher ceiling than the core we shipped out?
I don't know. To me, it's like that core of players that they shipped out still became quality NHLers. Now, did they ever become the stars or the guy that could, the players that could lead this team over the hump that Chuck Fletcher always envisioned? I think that one would be debatable. But it's way too early to say. I mean, Cunnin, Greenway, Eriksson Ek, I think none of them. Well, Cunnin has been a goal scorer at other levels, but the other guys really have not. And again, Fiala and Donato, we've got to see what they become. So, to me, it's just one of those things that you can debate one by one.
From Danny Sussman, this is the most important question of the podcast. What's your take on Marriott's super secret Cobalt status? Is that in your future?
I hope so. From what I've read about the Cobalt status, is like you almost got to be nominated for it. So if everybody here listening to this podcast wants to send is Bill Marriott the CEO of Marriott?
Sure.
Bill, I always see the pictures of the two Marriotts whenever you walk into a Marriott. If you all want to email them or send them emails nominating me for the super secret Cobalt status, I would absolutely love it.
That would be
awesome.
I have a friend who travels internationally frequently, and I was having a conversation with him. He was telling me that if you get to a certain point with Delta, they will, and like you're on a tight schedule, they will actually take you off the plane first and put you on like a cart and run you across the tarmac to the next flight. It's amazing the stuff that you can get to.
I don't know about the take off the plane first part, but if you get off a Delta flight, a lot of times you'll see a couple agents there holding a sign on, like, computerized sign or on an iPad with somebody's last name, and that is what happened. So you are taken down the Jetways bridge, the stairs, and put into a Mercedes or whatever, and you're taken to your next plane. That's the way it works. So I will never get to that point. It's just no way, because I don't fly internationally enough.
Right.
But I think I'm a 2 million miler, and that doesn't get you too much on Delta either. I have a friend that's he's an executive with I probably shouldn't say, but an executive with a hotel brand. And I believe he flies American everywhere because he's based in Chicago. So it would be American or United. And I think that he is treated that way. And then I've seen his rooms that he gets at Hyatt's, by the way. Oh, I just gave away the hotel brand. There we go. How about that?
One of my favorite things about you is you really can't keep secrets very well.
Yeah. I've seen the rooms he gets at the hotel brand that I will not mention. And they are unfreaking believable. And he's a funny guy, so I'm really good friends with his whole family. And so, all right, it's Hyatt. So every now and then, remember when there was a time where you go into Marriott's and they got rid of desks, and business travelers like me were going absolutely bet.
Yeah,
crazy. He'd be like in Hong Kong or freaking Sydney, Australia, or Dubai or whatever, and all of a sudden I get this text message with him of a video of him walking into his room, and it always ended with the picture of the desk.
That's awesome.
Like, here at Hyatt, we have actually desks if you want to use to write your stories. So I would have switched to Hyatt in an instant after I met him. But the problem, the thing with Marriott, and I love Hyatts. Trust me, the nicest hotels I've stayed in the world have been Hyatts. I remember as a kid, my grandparents used to always take my brother and me to Disney World, and we'd stay at, I think it was the Grand Hyatt down there. And it was just, I remember the pool to this day. But the thing with Marriott is that they got so many subsidiary brands that you can, every city you go on Marriott.com to freaking Des Moines, Iowa, and you're going to see within a vicinity 30 hotels that you could stay at. And it's, it's just from somebody that travels to all these cities like me, it's just an easier, and then you also get to that same point in life. Danny Sussman, I bet, didn't expect that he was going to get such an expansive answer to this.
Nor did I.
But you get to that point in life too, where it's like, it's almost you're at the point of no return. Like at this point, it's like I can't change from Delta, right? At this point, it's like, all right, I've committed to Marriott, and it's sort of that way.
That was quite the answer.
Yeah.
From Gina, do you think?
Good question, Danny.
Yeah.
It's so refreshing to not have to talk about hockey for a second. And
Gina,
people know that I just hate talking about me, so I just figured I'd change it.
I think they're starting to catch on to you.
Yeah.
From Gina, do you think a new GM will give a chance to any of the players Fenton brought in, or do new GMs usually take Fenton's previous route of getting rid of the core that the previous GM assembled?
Well, Fenton took it to the extreme. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he almost got rid of all four. It's just crazy. I mean, that you consider that a year ago, you thought they'd get rid of a couple in Coyle, Niederreiter, Zucker, and Granlund, but he almost got rid of all four and did get rid of all three within 5 weeks. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, that was an absolute blow up. And I believe an ill-conceived one. It didn't have a plan, didn't have a vision. It's something that we've been sounding the alarms on this podcast for a year. So my guess is that any new GM, especially at this late juncture, the roster is the roster. And so it is incumbent on guys like Eriksson, Cunnin, and Greenway, and then also Fiala and Donato, the new guys, to prove themselves. And if they prove themselves, they're absolutely going to get a chance to be good players on this team.
Both Harold Johnson and Artie Jones basically asked the same question, which is, should there be any concern that Carolina didn't want to hold on to Waddell?
No, this is all about the owner and him feeling that his front office and employees are pawns. I mean, it's that, that anybody can do it. Like, trust me, that's the way it is. The reason why Don Waddell became the GM of that team is that everybody he interviewed for the job last year and offered it to didn't want to come work there for $200,000. I mean, that is not, GMs don't make $200,000. Paul Fenton was a first-time GM, and his contract was something like 8-9-1 and 1-1, and the 1-1 being a club option, or maybe it was 9-1, 1-1, and 1-1. It was something like that. In terms of 100,000 to $1 million. $200,000 is insane. And you see it right now. The Carolina Hurricanes, as exciting and good as they were on the ice last year, off the ice, they were in shambles. No assistant GMs leaving, no video coach, no goalie coach, scouts leaving and not being replaced. Now potentially their GM leaving. This is on the owner, and the fact that he doesn't want to spend money. He openly says it, and the fact that trust me, if Don Waddell leaves, the next GM, I guarantee you, the next GM of the Carolina Hurricanes he might not make himself it, but it might be kind of, one of their analytics guys or something. I'm not kidding you. This is not about. I'm not saying that Don Waddell is the end all be all and that he had this incredible career when he was managing Atlanta, although there was major ownership issues there too, and which I think led to a lot of the issues. And trust me, I'm really very well in tune with what went on with the Atlanta Thrashers for multiple reasons. And so I think that, I'm not saying he did a great job there, but I do think there was other pressures and powers that be that caused him to struggle there as a GM. But I can tell you that the reason why he's suddenly available here has nothing to do with him.
Interesting. From Wes Ryan, would you be against having cap relief for teams if they sign a player they drafted, for example, Toronto and Marner?
Yeah. Do they have that in basketball? Is it, or is it? I think it is, right?
Yeah.
Different.
Signing your own player, you get a break. Yeah.
Right. And I would definitely be in tune to that. Right now, the only break you get in hockey is that you can sign him to an 8-year contract as opposed to a 7 max term. Call it the Suter-Parisi rule, where after that happened in the lockout the following year, they put in max terms where if you sign another team's free agent, you can only sign him to 7 years. And if you sign your own guy, you can go up to a maximum of 8. But yeah, I do think there needs to be more breaks in the new CBA, whether it's, restructuring contracts or they started to allow stuff like retaining money and retaining caps, which you couldn't do before the last lockout. But I would be in favor. I would want to look at it more and how it would work. That type of stuff might be above my pay grade and head, and my intelligence level. But I would be interested in at least learning how that would work.
Let's do a couple more Twitter questions to wrap up. Thanks to everybody for listening again. Thanks to all of our sponsors, as always. From Robert Duffy, was the GM situation a big reason Pavelski did not consider the Wild?
I think it was more of the team, what his wanting to win. I think it's the same alarms that you're hearing from Zach Parise. I think the reason why Phil Kessel didn't come here is the perception out there right now is that this team right now is not one that's poised to win a Stanley Cup in the next 2 or 3 years. And when you're 35 like Joe Pavelski, your goal is to win a cup in the next 2 or 3 years. And I think that he looked at Dallas as obviously a better situation than here.
From Mark Benschoof, chances the RFA is signed by training camp?
I think that will happen. I think my guess is that a guy like Hunter Warner can be done in a second. It might even be done. And Louis Belpedo, I think, could be done in a second, but I think his agent has tabled negotiations right now until a new GM's in place, because I think the thing with that one, even though it's a pretty cut and dry contract, I think that his agent is going to want to get a real set plan from the new GM of what he thinks of Belpedio, what his future is. The Belpedio contract's a really interesting one, because right now Belpedio's future with the Minnesota Wild could be really dictated on what happens with Jared Spurgeon. If Louis Belpedio one day is maybe the replacement for Jared Spurgeon, that could affect the way that he plays this year. It could affect the way he comes in optimistically or pessimistically about the season, everything. So I think just they want to kind of get a feeling from the new GM on what he thinks about Belpedio and where the Spurgeon negotiations are going to go from there. And then, Fiala and Eriksson Ek, I've got to think we're on their way to being signed. Same agent there, Claude Lemieux, the former player, actually. I think they were negotiating a bridge deal with Lemieux. I don't know if that now has hit the brakes. A bridge deal on Fiala, I don't know if that's now hit the brakes and they'll wait, but I can't imagine that there's going to be contract disputes going into camp on Fiala and Eriksson Ek. Both those players know with a new GM that they've got to come in here and make their impression right away, and so I think they'll get them done.
From Ernest Harper, this is a hockey question. From Ernest Harper, looking at the projected top 6 forwards, who will be the F1 and the F2 in the corners and behind the net, contesting for the puck and creating play? Seems like they lack the speed and skill to play a transition game. If it's Parise, what happens to his scoring opportunities and durability?
Well, usually with Boudreau, really like the F1 and F2 is almost dictated by who comes into the zone first. They don't have a set system in that way. So where a lot of guys, you would always have the third guy high being a center, or maybe in a lot of systems you might have the one of the F1s or F2s always being a center to dig down low. A lot of it is dictated on just who comes into the zone, on who basically is, say, the third guy high above the circles. Late last season, to get to this person's question, it just popped in my head, is the Wild became a real strict with the system, and I think it did bother a lot of players. In always making sure that they only had two guys in hard on the forecheck, and there was always had to be a safe guy, a third guy high, a center high above the hash marks in case that puck was turned over and they had to go back and defend. And the reason why that Bruce kind of made that tinker, I believe, is because this team couldn't score. They were getting shut out every night. So it got to the point where he felt they had to win 2-1 games, where usually Bruce Boudreau is somebody that wants to go in on the attack. To get back to the attacking question, and the transition question of this reader as well, is that, one reason why the Wild became, to me, weak on their forecheck last year and almost became a dump and chase team is I think that they lost a ton of speed and the last couple of years. And I think that Bruce Boudreau got to the point where he just felt like this team was going to always turn pucks over at the offensive blue line, and it would essentially then cause counterattacks the other way and odd man rushes, where essentially he's like, if you can't beat the defenseman, if they're standing up on you in the blue line, dump the puck early, hammer the defenseman, try to wear him down late in the game, and then you'll be able to create more space on those defensemen and come in with the puck and skate in and actually make plays. And so, at times I do think that the system became frustrating for a couple of players on the team. And that's something that this year, it's going to be interesting how Bruce Boudreau handles things, because this team, yes, Zuccarello is a great skater and east-west guy, especially, and elusive and things like that. But their speed this summer, Hartman can skate too. So the question is, did their speed significantly improve? That's going to allow them to really tinker with their system. I don't know if that answers your question to a whole, but his question definitely got me thinking about some of the issues that were around in the second half last season that may have also created a divide between the coach and the GM, because I don't think the GM was overly enamored the way that the Wild system was going late in the season. And I think some of the players as well. But, I think that everybody that might have been frustrated with the style the Wild played late in the season has to also understand that this team traded Granlund, Coyle, and Niederreiter, and all of a sudden they couldn't score. They had no Dumba. And I think Bruce Boudreau all of a sudden just hit the brakes, pulled everything back, and just tried to win 1-0, 2-1 games. And the Wild, obviously, in the second half, in the last couple months of the season, weren't good enough to do that.
Okay, two more questions. One from our friend Bill. Hope he brings his dad out to the show sometime soon. Pierre has long openly auditioned for the Wild GM position. I can't see him as a candidate in any capacity given his long career as a broadcaster. He could tell you where just about all current NHLers played in juniors, though. So, Bill, I don't even know if it's a question. He doesn't like Pierre as a candidate.
I don't think that Pierre is a first-tier candidate. I think it's more, again, a lot of these things are getting intel. Trust me, Peter Chiarelli was never going to be a candidate here. It was why I actually, it's funny, as a reporter, sometimes it's like you learn something and it's interesting, you want to write it, but you also know that the guy is not a legitimate candidate, and it's going to be radioactive with the fans. So when I reported Hextall and Chiarelli the other day, I knew right away that, all right, this is not going to go well with the fan base. And I assumed that he wasn't a legitimate candidate, but the guy has been a GM a long time. He managed a team to a Stanley Cup, and sometimes it's not bad to get that guy in front of you and talk to him and find out the perception of what he thinks about your team or how he would fix it, and use it as intelligence to learn more about your team. And I think that's the same thing with Pierre, but with Chiarelli, it was kind of that way. I knew right away that there's just no way that they're going to take a guy that is essentially Fenton's buddy, or at least that's the perception out there, and make him the next GM of the team. It's just no way, because they know that stuff's going to come out. And also you saw the reaction of Oilers fans and things. So I think it's going to be very, very hard for Chiarelli to get a next GM job. I just, after the reaction the other day for Chiarelli's name being out there about the Wild, and every other GM seeing that, every other owner, I should say, it's going to be very hard for Peter to ever get the number one seed again, I think.
From Mighty Beer Hunter, how would you sell coming to Minnesota to GM candidates?
How would I sell it? Passionate fans, a lot of it off the ice stuff. Passionate fans, an incredible place to live. To me, that is the big thing about this job. and then a latitude. You know you're going to be a cap team. You know you're going to be given all the assets in the world, financial and otherwise, to try to make this team as good as you can off the ice to eventually get it on the ice. I know some Wild fans are always worried about a passionate owner and think he's meddling. Maybe he became a little more meddling than normal this year because he was trying to essentially provide oversight when he started to really pick up on the red flags of Paul Fenton late in the season. But I don't think that's normally the case where a GM has to, on every move, talk to the owner about everything. But to me, some would look at Craig Leopold as being a huge asset, having a passionate fan that's willing to spend to the cap. The other day I was doing something on Cap Friendly, and I saw the Wild under Craig Leopold have spent about $1.3 billion in payroll. And trust me, this is not a money-making enterprise here right now, especially the last couple of years when you don't have playoff success. So that would be the way. And then on the ice, I mean, again, I think that you're going to be, this team is, I was talking to, or I was reading Dom, or one of our analytics writers, with The Athletic the other day. And he basically said that he's not nearly as negative about what the Wild could do as most people. And then I was talking to a GM candidate right before this podcast that said, the last 4 or 5 years, this team was actually could have done a lot more than they did. That there is a lot to work with there now. Now, is the lineup as a roster as appealing as it was maybe a year ago? Probably not. But I don't think it's nearly as bad as everybody wants to make it out to be, including myself. I mean, I'm somebody that's partially to blame that because, you look around the division, you look around the conference, and you look at some of the guys that have been traded off this team and the fact that we haven't seen yet the best of a lot of these young kids, and you start to almost sound the alarms that this team is just crap. And so I'm part of that reason maybe for that perception. And I can tell you that when I talk to a lot of GM candidates or people that know the GM candidates here the last, couple weeks, I can tell you that, or it feels like a couple weeks. It's really only been about a week and a half. I can tell you the perception out there about the Minnesota Wild is a lot better than maybe some of us want to make it out to be.
Cool. Good place to end. Michael Russo expressing optimism about the Minnesota Wild. That's fun. It's different. It's been quite a year, man. It's been quite a year, and that's like you said. There have been so many negative developments with the organization and with this team that it can be easy to forget. They do, the cupboard isn't completely bare. It just hasn't worked.
Yeah, and I will. You always ask me for final thoughts. I'll kind of find it. I'll have, this is my final thought on this, and hopefully it's not convoluted in the way that I say it. But a couple people, one of our buddies, Al, that loves to trash me on Twitter, has brought this up a couple times. Like, why didn't you sound the alarms or write about this or talk about this during the entire year, what you wrote in your Fenton piece the other day? And what I'll tell you is that, look, first of all, when you're covering a team, actually, all right, I'm going to tell you it's going to be convoluted, everything I say, because I just had 1,000 thoughts that went in my head. First of all, nobody knows the chair that I'm in. And on the daily basis, the fires that I have to put out, that with every single story I write, the amount of calls and texts and battles that you have to have here. And I think it's been pretty well publicized here that this past year was a very tough year for me covering this team, because of some of the conversations that I had behind the scenes with Paul and covering this team and just the battles there. But I feel that you had to be living in a hole here, especially if you listen to this podcast and didn't realize that there was a lot of madness going on behind the scenes here. I mean, I had not hidden the fact that the Rafts deal was done really quickly and very poorly executed. I haven't hidden the fact that the Bitetto thing created a month-long of mismanagement and drama behind the scenes. To get back to the Bitetto thing, the reason why that didn't make sense is that you had to acquire Bitetto, you were not allowed to bring back Eriksson Ek and Cunnin. So now right away you piss off those two players. You probably piss off the coach who had the team rolling before that in a large way because Eriksson Ek and Cunnin were playing well. Now all of a sudden because you screwed up and mismanaged this whole situation, you have to piss off the entire team by getting rid of Nate Prosser and essentially kicking him out of this franchise, and JT Brown, who I believe just had a baby a couple days before. And then you force essentially the coach to play Boteto over Nick Seeler, who a week before that threw his body in front of 3 or 4 shots that led to a huge win in Colorado. So that one move of claiming a guy off waivers set this team into an absolute tailspin that led to one win in the first 10 games in February and essentially ruined the season. That is mismanagement. This is stuff I have said on the podcast. This is stuff I have written. I wrote for all month of February that they were singularly focused on Fiala. And by the way, I was not getting that from inside the organization. I have a lot of sources league-wide, and I had written for 3-4 weeks that it was going to be Fiala for Granlund and talked about it on here that I kept on hearing Fiala. So, like, this is stuff that I said. Now, maybe I didn't do it with as much detail as I did in the Benton piece the other day, but I remember sitting in your apartment doing a podcast about 6 months ago, Jim, and I got a lot of crap from it from Wild fans on Twitter after we published the podcast. But I sat there for 30 minutes and bemoaned to you that my sense on Paul Fenton was that he had no plan, that he was shooting from the hip on every single move. And that's what we've sounded these alarms. So, to me, what I wrote the other day was not something that was absolutely new. And I think what was good here is that, essentially Craig Leopold and Matt Maka and these guys picked up on the fact that a lot of damage was done this year and eventually had to pull the plug. To go to the extreme of firing a GM after 1 year, admitting such a mistake, something that can be humiliating essentially to Craig Leopold for this decision, that's nothing to take lightly. But what it also tells you as a fan is that the stuff that we've been talking about on this podcast the last year was not made up. It wasn't envisioned. It wasn't just because the beat writer and the GM weren't getting along. I mean, this is the reason why we weren't getting along was because I was writing and pointing this stuff out. So that's my final thought.
Good final thought. And it wasn't convoluted. It was on point. I'm glad you got to that. Great stuff from Michael as always. Again, next live show is August 13th, 7 o'clock at Tin Shed in Savage. Come on down and visit us. Thanks to all of our sponsors, and we will talk to you then.
Pretty little city built on a hillside. Music in the bars and fire in the sky. We went to the beach and it was covered in ice. And I used to call it home. So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world won't forgive a winner.
It's your last chance to get gifts before the holiday, and right now at Old Navy, everything's up to 75% off with gifts from just $1, $2, $3, and $4. Buy online, pick up in store for free in 2 hours with extended store hours too. Get up to 75% off everything at Old Navy and OldNavy.com now. Valid 12/18 to 12/24, excludes gift cards, today only, 2-day only deals, register lane items, jewelry, and Zip Zap stuff gifting bins. Orders must be placed before 4 p.m. for same-day pickup, subject to availability and delays. Additional terms apply.
Buckle up, because Metro is bringing you the best deal in wireless. Switch to Metro and get your choice of 2 awesome free phones from top brands like Samsung and LG with huge HD screens and tons of memory for all your pics and videos. So hurry into Metro and get your awesome free phones only at Metro. Plus sales tax and activation fee. Requires port-in of eligible number not currently active on T-Mobile network or active on Metro in past 90 days. Limit 4 per account or household. Restrictions apply. See store for details and terms and conditions.